The future of drone journalism is actually boring. We are about 10 years away from everybody stopping freaking out about this. Everybody's not going to be all weirded out that we're using flying robots. We'll say, you know, are you going to cover a brush fire with a drone? And the newsroom's going to go, well, of course we would. Like, why wouldn't we? Like, haven't we always done that? You know, we're going to forget really, really quickly that this moment happened where we were all like, oh my God, this is amazing. So we're going to go from freaking out to bored pretty quickly, and that's what the future is going to be. It is now, and it will always be a tool. It's a tool to tell stories. It's a tool to gather information. It's a tool to gather video and audio and photo and data and you name it. Is it cool? Heck yeah, it is, but it is just a tool. I started the lab because I figured there were two major areas of problems. One, we're going to be very practical, like how big of a camera can we lift in the air? How long will they fly? How do you fly them? That kind of thing. The other area was this sort of legal, safety, ethical area where a lot of journalists who are suddenly going to be able to fly had never had to think about before. You know, how many journalists in this country understand airspace restrictions and could read a sectional chart and know where they could fly and where they couldn't? It's things like that. You know, there's regulatory issues here that I never imagined that we would get so far into, but here we are. Honestly, there's a lot of stuff that I thought originally was going to be a really big deal that I realized since then. Actually, no, we've already handled that. You know, a lot of the really obvious ethical issues, our current standards, our current ethical practices pretty much handle this already. Where it gets more interesting is the area of noise and psychological impacts and things like that. So that's where it was. It was just recognizing that journalism as an industry was going to jump into this with both feet, and that was going to have consequences. And we were doing so without having a full history of understanding here. So, you know, I've given a talk, 100 times about what it's like to get a cease and desist order from a federal regulatory agency, which the short version is it's exhilarating. That's probably the one that did it, and it was Ben Kramer and it was a couple other students, and we were out on the Platte River. We were out of controlled airspace. We were under 300 feet, really. We were not flying over any people or private property. We were just flying over a river. I mean, we couldn't have done it any more safe than we did, but because we're a state university and didn't have a specific permit, we got a nasty letter. And to that point, I think we were the 12th letter the FAA had ever sent. So we sort of have a rare commodity, which is, an official letter from the FAA saying, no. So it probably wasn't the impact we thought we were trying to have, but that definitely is the one. I tell students on recruiting tours who are coming to the campus to see the College of Journalism, we're the first drone journalism program at any journalism school in the world, and we're the first to get a cease and desist order from the FAA. So, you win some, you lose some. I think we're going to learn a lot about the limits of the First Amendment through this. I think a lot of journalists have this idea that once they get a drone, they can just fly over crime scenes. They'll be able to get access to places that they haven't gotten before. And the question will become, what are the limits to the First Amendment, and what are the limits to being able to photograph in a public place? Courts have recognized a First Amendment right to photograph in a public place. That's why we can take our cell phones out, take a selfie on a street, and nobody behind the picture, photobombing you has anything to say about it, because we have a First Amendment right to do that. Photos are expression. So the question becomes, how far from yourself does that extend? Does your First Amendment right to photograph in a public place count when it's a drone that has the camera and it's 100, 200, 300 feet away from you? I tell people all the time that there's an old ethical question of just because you can, should you? Drones are going to be especially sensitive in that area because people are kind of weirded out by them. And so you've got a lot of journalists out there right now who are looking for an angle, who view drones with discomfort. And any story that comes along that has kind of a negative angle on a drone, it's going to be reported on, and then there's a group of people who are just going to blow it out of proportion or going to take an angle that's just that these things are evil and they should be banned. So journalists are going to learn the hard way, I'm afraid, that there are stories that they shouldn't use drones in, and it's not going to be legal, and it's not going to be ethical, it's not going to be anything they hadn't done before with a manned aircraft, but because they did it with a drone, people are going to freak out. And figuring out where that line is going to be hard.